now blank area. So it's now what we call fallow, meaning it's resting. So we could just leave it as bare dirt, but what happens is it gets completely covered in billions of weeds, the same weeds that are taking over your plots at the moment, which you're managing with lots of mulch and hand weeding. Okay, but a better system is to actually put in some cover crops or green manure. Why they're called green manure? It's kind of like manure, but it's green, it's based on plants. So we're going to sow today oats, not wild oats, domesticated oats, and lupins. And Rowan from the nursery is at the moment just mixing the lupins with an inoculant, a rhizobium bacterium, which will have a symbiotic relationship in the roots of the lupins and fix nitrogen from the air. We have a prac sheet on that coming up at some stage in the next 2 weeks. So the reason we do that is to stabilise the soil, to replenish the nutrients that have disappeared, because obviously all the zucchinis and the broccoli and everything that was planted here last year is gone. So we're just we've stripped all the nutrients out of the soil. And we're also building up organic matter, so carbon, so we're actually improving soil structure. Now, one of the issues, of course, is that this area gets ploughed, and long-term ploughing can be very detrimental to soil health and structure. So this is a very good practice to try and compensate for that as well. Now, here's the kind of dilemma though. This area had already exploded in weeds. And so we have an issue that we want to get these other crops in, these green manure cover crops in, the lupins and the oats. So we need to get rid of the weeds temporarily. There's a little catch I'll tell you about in a minute. So what do? We have to spray herbicide, and we use glyphosate, Roundup, to knock them down, right? So this is actually a really big issue for global agriculture generally, because we have this sort of quite scary irony at the moment, which is that soil erosion is still a massive problem globally, but it's been very much radically reduced in the last 20 or 30 years by using herbicides. Because when you use a herbicide, you kill off the weeds, and those weeds actually go into the soil as organic matter. And it means that farmers have to do way less ploughing. That's in the broadacre landscapes of North America, Australia, Europe. So that's the use of these glyphosate herbicides or knockdown herbicides has lessened soil erosion rates, but has led farmers to become extremely dependent on these chemicals and on the big companies that manufacture them, like Monsanto, that's now been swallowed up by Bayer. So what we're doing today is being very honest with you. We're showing you that that Rowan's applied the knockdown herbicide so we can put these lupins and these oats in, and then we have another section at the back where there's no spraying at all. Now, interestingly, what we've just worked out is that a cover crop from 2 years ago, when we had a similar fallow and sowed some ryegrass and some other species, they actually flowered and set seed. And so actually we have a kind of self-sown cover crop anyway. We're going to take you down there and show you what's coming up. Now, meanwhile, in the background here, there's Rowan, and he's put the lupin seeds in with the inoculant, with the rhizobium bacterium, and he's now just scattering the seed out. And then he and I are going to be raking it all in. And if there's rain on the way, then we'll just let the rainfall help germinate the seeds, or we might put the sprinklers on. So now behind the camera today is Sash, and I think Sash is going to walk up to Rowan and we'll ask him what he's doing.
Let's do that.
Hi, Rowan.
Oh, hi there, Chris.
Hi. Can we have a quick look in your bucket?
Sure.
Okay.
So you've got some lupins with some of the inoculant mixed in, and usually you'd mix that with some agricultural lime and just make a little slurry and get the inoculant to adhere to the lupins, and that just helps with germination. And we're just spreading that out evenly over this spot, and then we can rake it in.
And I should say that since Rowan's been at Burnley, he's really been red hot on doing this cover cropping and green manuring. We used to be a bit informal about it in the past, but this is really good agricultural practice, and even good practice in a home garden, absolutely. And in fact, that's why people often sow broad beans in winter too. Sash, we wander down and have a look at the... I'll just stand back here so I can wipe the sun cream out of my eyes.
let's have a look at the green crop that's re-emerged by itself.
So yeah, we have this. So this was ploughed in January or February, and of course we had this relatively heavy summer rain this year. So there's been an explosion of some of the former crops. We've got leeks that have gone to seed. There's some bok choy over here, or pak choy, lots of nettles, wild radish. These are all weeds you're going to learn about over the next couple of weeks. What else? Yeah, there are some broad beans that have popped up too. So within reason, weeds still put carbon back into the soil. If you plough them, especially before they set seed, they're still a kind of green manure. You just got to be very careful that they don't end up flowering and taking over the area that you want to grow. But it's not a complete disaster. And of course, what we see here is a ryegrass dominating that we can actually then plough up and grow. It'll be good for next year's student plots. It will come back here, I should say, too. So we're rotating. So this year you guys are growing over here. Next year the plots will be here. Here's a broad bean here.
What else do we have coming up to get a close-up of?
Let's get a close-up of this nettle.
Yep.
So that's actually quite a delicious edible.
Urtica urens?
Yeah, Urtica urens. That actually looks like a young broccoli, which I suspect that, in fact I know that last year, there's always the odd student who lets their broccoli flower. The broccoli, it flowers and it sets seed, so that's actually a young broccoli. Here's the Asian vegetable here, which I can't remember. Do you remember which one this is, Sash?
Looks like a bok choy.
Yeah, it looks like a bok choy. That's the ryegrass there.
Tatsoi, maybe?
Could be.
We'll wait and see.
Yep. Yeah, and then that leek is from seed. The leeks always set seed in the student plots if people don't eat them, and they're pretty prolific flowers and seeders. So there you go. Now where's Rowan up to? Looks like we're about to start.
How you going there, Rowan?
Yeah, good, thank you. So we're over sowing. That's worth noting. So we've got
Hang on.
twice as much seed as we would otherwise.
So what Rowan?
So we're just going to leave that one go.
So what Rowan's saying is he's over-sowing, meaning we're putting in a way more seed than we necessarily need. But that's actually a genuine tactic in its own right, because it means that you'll get this huge germination and a lot of biomass produced, and it should smother any other weeds that want to germinate in this fallow plot. All right, well I might go get the oats, Rowan. Is that okay? Start doing that? Yeah. All right.
So the oats don't require an inoculum?
No, yeah, so speaking of oats, just to remind everyone, lupins are a legume, so they fix nitrogen as long as they've got that symbiotic relationship with the correct bacteria in the soil. I'll double check that it's rhizobium as well, but it should be. It's perfectly possible that the microorganisms are actually already in the soil, but it's just insurance to actually put the inoculant in with the seed. And of course, oats is a grass. All right, so a very fast-growing grass, and you could theoretically harvest the actual flower heads and get oats out of them. But we'll aim to actually dig them in before they flower. Is that correct, Rowan? Do we actually have a policy of digging ploughing the oats in before they flower, or it doesn't matter?
Yeah, we do.
We do. There you go.
It's important. So when you, depending on the crop that you buy, the place you buy from will recommend a time when you should actually plough it back in.
Yeah.
So that's kind of important. So there's no hard and fast rule. We'll just sort of be watching the crop, and then when it's ready to go, whether dependent.
But always before flowering.
Yeah.
If you can.
That's right. Which is what we didn't do here, obviously.
Yeah.
Which is why we have our easy, lazy green manure
Which
crop.
is not a bad thing.
Which is actually
In
not a
this
bad
case,
thing.
Yeah.
Bucking the trend. Working this case.
Already crowding out the normal weeds. 1.5.
1.5. I'm trying. 1.5 to stay alive, kids. Sorry if the filming's a little bit shaky. So Chris is going to sow some of the oats now,
The thing is just make sure you've got enough to get
and he's
around.
going to over sow. So the same area that Rowan has gone
Right,
over,
so-
he's mixing those oats in with the lupin seed.
I'm feeding the chooks, as they say.
What do they call it again, Chris?
Feeding the chooks.
And is there a density that's recommended on those packets?
Yeah, let's have a bit of a read up here. It says germination 4 to 6 days, depth 5 centimetres deep. We'll have to rake it in to get that. Position full sun, direct where it is to grow for sowing, soil type wide range, pH 5.5 to 6.5. And yeah, so dig or slash in at any stage before flowers are fully formed. 6 to 8 weeks is enough time for a green manure crop.
Beautiful.
So this bag that we have here
Yeah.
should do about 1,000 square metres, which we've calculated is approximately the size of the field we're standing in. So by doing
great.
half of this,
Yeah, that's what
we're doubling the application rate.
And last time we did this, we didn't actually dig it in, and we noticed that the success wasn't as good.
We did dig it in, but it wasn't uniform.
Right.
So we got mixed results. So we'd get little patches coming up where it was raked in really well, and then other patches not so good. But what's interesting about what Chris was saying about the grass up there is it's actually led to a really good result, accidentally.
Well, I know that in previous years before, we have done green crops and not dug them in, and the germination hasn't been as good as we've had recently.
Yeah.
So it is worth raking it in.
Yeah, it is. And also there's another thing too, probably getting the water onto it as well. So last year, you can see these sprinklers around the side, we'll probably set those up so that we get the space irrigated as well.
I'm coming back to you, Chris.
Yeah, no, one thing I was going to say was that the yellowing off grass on the edge here is the kikuyu, which really dominates in the field station. And that's a perennial summer grass from East Africa, from Kenya and Tanzania. I think that's the right country. Anyway, certainly in Kenya. And one of the issues is that with climate change, it no longer really goes dormant in winter, not properly anyway. And it's a really useful turf grass, but very invasive, but very susceptible to Roundup. So again, it's the compromise with using a chemical, but it's very important to keep the kikuyu out of here, because if it starts to invade this area and then we plough, you're effectively helping cultivate it, because you break it up and it resprouts from rhizomes or it stolons. And so really very important to keep the kikuyu under control on the edges of this cropping area.
If you want to manage an area without using glyphosate and you're up against a grass like this, then your management of the edging, it needs to be meticulous.
Absolutely. Maybe use sheep or livestock. Okay, well I think that's about it for this session. So just remember the key terms are fallow, green manure, cover crop, stabilising the soil, building up organic matter, and what we might show you in a minute is just the hard labour of actually raking it in.
Very good. Here comes Rowan with a rake.